Hey, everybody, it's Joe Solari. I help authors build great businesses. Welcome to my first session to talk about um, Autoresponder Advantage and what I've kind of set up here for you guys. Before I go into the actual website and walk you around that, um, what's going on there, which I will spend some time. I was planning on touching a little bit on what's going on in this website, as well as probably going into MailerLite and talking a little bit about some of these automations to help you guys really understand what this is all about. What am I trying to do with this thing? So let me first back up and talk about what got me to go and spend all this time to do this research and build out this site. So if you're not familiar, I wrote a book called Advantage, which is about how the publishing market works and this premise of mine that while the market is a winner-take-all market, how you can drive that cumulative advantage to work for yourself is by how you focus on the individual and getting them to associate their identity with your brand, and then how you use community to build up them, to build this kind of core audience that drives your sales in the publishing market. And then really the market only acts as an amplifier to that signal that you send into the market. So you'll see a lot of here as you're going through the site that I talk about the signal. Like, we want to get your optimum signal that you send into the market. Because, for example, if you take a mailing list and you uploaded it into Facebook to use that as a lookalike audience, Facebook is going to take those names and they're going to associate that with the data they have in their site. And then they would build this audience of people like that based on millions of data points that they have. The more that we know that those people really represent your ideal customer, the better fidelity you're going to have when you try to amplify that signal. Same is true when you go to Amazon and your book launches. The people that they see buy your book on the website, they're going to then see through their data set who they can send that information to that is like that, to see if they want to buy your book. So again, we want to help with that signal. So what does that have to do with email and autoresponders? This is called Autoresponder Advantage. I believe that there are some things that authors do that are fundamentally damaging their marketing. The fundamental thing that authors are doing is they're taking digital marketing strategies and they're applying them to selling books. And there's a whole multitude of reasons why that doesn't work well. But we're not going to get into that in this one. We're going to focus really on autoresponders. I also think there's a part of this that authors have as a superpower that we keep neglecting, and that is the power of story. If we were to go talk to some of the top marketers and ad people that are out today doing work for major products, they would tell you that story, especially ones that can create emotion and be emotive, are what drive good advertising. And as a storyteller, we do that in a book. We can get people to turn page after page to your story, but then they don't. When you go to your marketing, it's completely different. It's buy my book, and it's the same stuff you see from every other author. So we're going to combine a couple things. We're going to take the power of an email service provider's automations and your ability to tell a story, and we're going to use that in a way that's going to create a story experience to sell your story. So what am I talking about? We're really looking at, when we go into Autoresponder Advantage, this thing is set up to show you some different ways for you to build out these autoresponders based on where your reader is. So when you come in here, you get to this home screen. You've got these other pieces along here. What we're going into is a process as best as I've mapped out for what I know today, okay? And this is really a work in progress. But the first thing when you get in here is if you answer this question, there's a little video from me. I won't play it. But tell me where you are when you come in here. So when you join, you come in here and just answer that question. Are you just browsing and learning at your own pace? Are you going to be looking at this starting from zero? So you're a new author with no audience, just getting going. Or are you somebody that so then the third piece is, are you that author that has already got a series and you're kind of going and you really want to understand this whole idea I have about read through Rehab and getting your list built on not worrying about list building as much as worrying about getting your existing readers to read more of your books. So this is going to help all of that. But I've broken it up in these different chunks. And how I've thought about this is kind of starting from zero, somebody coming in and understanding that they have got to build a list. They need to then get those people familiar with their work and get them conditioned to the point where they are ready to buy a book. So let's go back here and walk through these different sections. As you can see, you go through here. There's a lot of stuff to read. I go into how these different components that we're going to show you in Autoresponder Advantage tie off to the different parts of a marketing funnel. I've also got a large map of how this all interconnects. This will change over time as I learn about this more and more. And I will provide a link in here later on for you guys to sign up for this, because this thing is completely free. The stuff that I'm showing you today is here for authors to come and learn from and use. You can go to this page here at courses at joesolari.com, autoresponder, sign up. Again, I'll provide the link. And you can sign up. Once you do this, you'll get an email with your login information and you're in, and you'll be able to have access to all this stuff. So as we go through here, I'm trying to detail out the process as I think about it. And we have this first section, which is the reader journey. Okay. So when you think about segmentation, a lot of times you think about qualities of a reader. Are they like this? Or are they like that? What we're going to be doing in the Autoresponder Advantage is not only are we going to be trying to understand characteristics of your reader, but we're going to understand where they are in a process, right? Because really, if you believe that a marketing funnel is a reliable model for thinking about this process, the time to go from awareness through purchase, indoctrination, retention, and advocacy, is contingent on where the customer is in their life. Not what you want, not what you're trying to shove down their throat, but where they are. So being able to let them move through this at their own pace. And then I think another very important part of what we're doing here is understanding that after the sale, there is a more important funnel that is required for us to get what we want, which is a true fan. And you're going to see how I do this through this whole process. So that reader journey that I'm talking about is the know, like, and trust. It's how you indoctrinate people and retain them. And how I'm thinking about this is that you create stories around your story. So rather than emails being the traditional, hey, I'm this author and I'm, doing this kind of writing and I want you to buy my book and I've got a dog and here's some things about my writing process. Instead, we're going to have this all about your story world. And whether it's your main character that is a guide character or another character that you create, you're going to have build out a structure which has arcs that move the reader from point to point in your story world, right? So if you have a main character that is going through things in the book, we're going to want to set that up, and we're going to want to help the reader to use their powers of imagination and connection with your characters to get them to invest in this. And we're going to do this early on, and then we're going to have continuity in that process all the way from their first touch to when they finally become an advocate of yours. So the reader journey piece in here is about how you map that out and kind of thinking big, and how you're going to think about these stories that go from a cold traffic to warm traffic to somebody that's bought your book and getting to buy future books. So all of that is going to be part of this big picture that you've got to kind of paint, so that you know what to fill in as you build out the next sections. Right from this main page, you can then bounce to these different sections. And I don't think there's anything wrong if you're an established author that just wants to go focus on read through, that you go do that. But again, the way I built this out was thinking about a new author that has got no audience, no mailing list, and how you build up from zero. So I'm going to go to the starting from zero section. And we go right into this whole idea of what's the purpose of cold marketing. So you're getting started, you have no visibility, and nobody has discovered your books yet. So we need to build a system that does that allows you to not only get visibility, which is another part we're going to talk about, but once you do get visibility, nobody's discovered you. They've seen maybe your book cover, but that doesn't mean that they're aware of what your writing has in store for them. We have to get them to read. And while lead magnets or reader magnets, whatever you want to call them, are a powerful, powerful tool to do that, the dirty secret of them is a lot of people download those books and never read them. So what are we going to do to improve your process? Because if we could double or triple that number of people reading it, your business is going to scale up much faster. So we're going to this goes into a lot of my ideas about getting ready for your first launch. And most of this work is going to be done ahead of time. And what you need to set up structurally, like website and automation sequences and things like book funnel, the things you're going to have to build out. And there's some of this stuff I'm still working out. Like I said, this is a work in progress, but I feel so strongly about what power there is in you guys applying these tools that I wanted to give you guys early access to get in there and start playing around with this. Not only so that you can get kind of that edge by adopting this earlier, but you can also tell me what I need to help you with in this process. So, the first big concept that's different is the idea of on your website, instead of having a website that looks like a storefront or is kind of this platform about you trying to look like a bigger thing than you are at this point, because you may have not even written a book yet. It's about setting up a stage for somebody to get that taste test of your work and to read it, and then have something to do after that. So while we're going to talk about novellas and how that stuff can be applied, having something that's even simpler so that when people land on your website, you just deliver story. And I talk about some of the different platforms you can do, but the idea is that you provide a quick, simple micro story, something that's a couple thousand words at the most. It's your best writing that you can really put out there. And it's an easy format. It's out on a web page that's open to access, that's searchable. People can go on it. I could be on the train and I could read it on my phone really quickly. And what happens is you have this micro story that delivers the essence of kind of your writing, And this has to be really good stuff like that. The first sentence has to get them to read the first paragraph that gets them to read through this thing. You get them to a point where they're at kind of a cliffhanger, and you have a button for them to click to the next page, right? And why do I do that? Well, making them move from that page, just that little click to get to the next thing, sets up some things in their brain about doing something and getting a payoff, and that payoff being in story. And what you finish up with is the end of that story, your big twist, the happily ever after, whatever it is that's important for your story world, and your story experience. You deliver that. Boom. At the end of that, you say, hey, if you want more of this, sign up, and I'm going to send you my next story. But you don't say it that way. The way you do it is you have it still in a story methodology where there is a character. Maybe it's the character they just met in this micro story. Maybe it's a guide character that you've come up with. But this character who's going to be their guide through this process is going to intrigue them with the same tools that you use in story of open loops and payoffs, the things you do to get people to turn page. And you set them up for a loop that'll close in that next novella, right? So they sign up, and what's going to happen then is they're going to get delivered that novella. And what I've done to help you in this, as you go through here, as you'll see, I talk a little bit about newsletter swaps, which is another important thing about building your audience. But we have what is called the cold sequence, right? And there's video in here for you to follow this, to go through the actual sequence. I go step by step to show you how to do that. But what we're doing here is we're setting ourselves up for when an audience, a potential person or prospect here comes in, they either read the micro story, right? And they say, hey, I want more. I want that novella. And they click there, and they're going to get sent to the sequence. Or you're using things like newsletter swaps and promos to get people to get your reader magnet, where they come in and they click in. So there's these 2 points now where they come into your funnel, and you're going to now do what with them? You're going to send them that magnet, right? But this is where things are different. What we're going to be doing, and I will go over here and show you this. We're going to send them into a automation sequence that has a series of questions in it that's going to help us to know where they are in the process. So what am I talking about here? Is using survey functions, using the custom fields functions and automations, probably some things that you may not be too comfortable using, but are very powerful tools in the autoresponder, is going to help us to know what we should do with this reader. And while the whole time we're doing this, we're doing it so that it associates with your story, that this whole thing becomes something that readers love, which is to read. So you have to be thinking again back to that bigger picture of the story world. But we're going to ask them a question. Where are you with the novella I sent you? Have you read it and loved it? You not like it? It's at the top of your to read pile. Check with me in a week. Check with me in a couple of days. Those questions will write to custom fields. And when they do that, when they write to those custom fields, we can then trigger further things in the automation. Because what we can do is we can look at that custom field, and if it's got an A in that, which meant that they took a certain action, we're going to send them on different paths. Now, while this may all look very complex, most of this stuff is cut and paste. Once you start building these as templates, you can just pull them from your library and put them into these sequences. there's also things that are happening in these decision trees where, based on this, all we're really doing is adjusting the time frame. Because if we're seeing that somebody's a slow reader, right? So in this first sequence, we've sent them they've gotten the novella. We are going to identify quickly, are they reading it now, or have they read it and they don't like it? Or have they read it and they like it? So we know those three things. Of one of them, are they reading it? We want to feel for like, hey, how long do you read? Are you a fast reader or a slow reader? So we're not bugging them, because part of this thing is we're building automations that scale. So the more people that go in it, it just handles more people. The other thing is that it's aligning with where the reader is, not where you want them in your sales process, but exactly where they are, right? So in this whole process, as they go through it, we do some things to qualify them and send them down these different paths. In some cases, we're just sending them the same email. But one big part of this is that when they get through the sequence, if they haven't read the novella and gone to the back of that and clicked through there, they're not going to go on to your mailing list. We've tried to qualify this prospect. They're not interested. Maybe they're just there for free books. Maybe they're lazy. Maybe they'll get to it in a couple months. But the only way they're going to move to the next step is if they've read through the novella, and then we put them into another sequence. Now, where we're going from here is, walking through these different layers. So the next thing we're going to do is a sequence for what happens if somebody has read the novella and gone to the next sequence. Well, now we've warmed them up. They've got some awareness of what your books are like, and they've liked them enough, at least at a free level, that they've gone through some hoops, right? They've clicked on some things, they've downloaded some things, they've read some things. So what are we going to do next? Well, now we're going to sell to them. We're also going to start figuring out some other things about them. This whole sequence that I've got here, I don't want to go through all this because I'm going to break down these things and do additional videos on these later on. But this whole sequence here is to get somebody to buy a book, right? This is the whole sequence about getting somebody that has come in through cold traffic. We've warmed them up. They now show intent. Now we're going to sell them. If somebody does buy that book, right, whatever book it is you're going to sell, and an important part of this thing is that instead of just being like, hey, I've got all these books, you should buy any of my books, we're getting on a very deliberate path, right? This is about a story and progression, and you should be transitioning them from one point to the next, book to book, series to series. And that's where we go into this next piece, which is what I call read through rehab. And read through rehab is all about what we can do with somebody that now that they are buying. Okay, so the only time somebody drops into these kind of automations is after they have purchased a book and signed up from the back of that book. Right? So this is what we typically would call an organic lead. But what we're trying to do is not just, the typical sequence of, hey, thanks for signing up, here's my newsletter. We have not put them on a newsletter or any type of a repetitive mailing list because we're at a point where we have to refine the signal. And what I'm going to show you here, I believe, reduces the need to have a newsletter every week all the time. Because instead of having the newsletter as a way of warming up and keeping your audience engaged, what's engaging them is these different autoresponder sequences that are associated with where they are signaling they are in your reading. We're going to repeat these sequences over and over again to move them from book to book. And why is this important? What if we could improve your read through by 10%. How much profitability would that get your business? Do the math. You really should to understand this, because it is super important to see that we spend too much time in author marketing trying to find the next new reader than we do on the reader we've already won, making sure that we've extracted the most value out of them we can. Just saying buy my book over and over again is repetitive and noisy and just sounds and smells like every other author out there. But if instead you create an ecosystem that once they're in, it's using story to move them from point to point, they have a pleasant experience, and the sale happens because it's the next obvious thing, right? It's the next thing they have to do on their quest to know the answer to these questions, the way that you've ignited their curiosity. It forces them to move on and on. And in that, they spend more money with you. And it doesn't matter whether you're wide or in KU, the more that you get them to move through a series and from series to series, the more money that's going to make for you. Now, on the flip side of that, if you have this system built, right, when you do advertise, your results will be better because you're going to improve read through. So quite frankly, I would say to you, stop with whatever you're trying to do to get more new customers and focus on this rehab piece to make sure that you're getting the most out of your existing customers. They're the ones that are paying the bills today. They're the ones that are giving you money that allows you to go find the next new customer. So the more that we can help make sure that those folks are treated really, really well, the better it's going to be for your business overall. So in this section, I'm going to lay out to you how you do these organic sequences. I've got some audio to listen to. There's videos through here. Again, we're in a situation where got examples of how to do these automations, how to build the read-through sequence. All of this is here for you to kind of read through at your leisure and do this work. I've got videos here. I've got the full sequences built out. And what you'll see is as you go through this stuff, that a lot of it is repetitive. That once you get familiar with how to use custom fields, how you write these emails, how you set up these surveys, you kind of use the same pieces over and over again. And it becomes a lot easier than you might think. So that's kind of the essence of this thing. I've got some sections here that I'm building out for specifically how you do this inside MailerLite. As I've mentioned to some folks, I've got some other autoresponders that I will be adding to this later, but I started with MailerLite because it's by far the one that most authors are using. So for me to take that and break that down is really going to help. If you're a person that's using something else like ConvertKit or SendFox or Author Email or all the other ones out there, I'm not saying switch. Absolutely not. Stick with what you got. Read through this and understand the similarities between the platform that you have and what I've described in MailerLite, because a lot of these things, 90% of this, most platforms have, or maybe you have even more features, but just starting to use these features or their version of groups and segments and custom fields and decision trees is going to help you to build this in whatever platform you're using. It's going to be a lot of work, and I know that's going to turn some people off. That's okay. We don't want everybody to do this. But those of you that are ready to do this kind of work, and those of you that are going to put the effort into this, what you're going to find out is that you're going to see cumulative advantage build. And it's going to scale, and it's not going to require a lot of touches. And why is that? It's because you did all this work up front that has built a nurturing engine, a virtuous marketing circle that allows people to come in and not feel like they're being sold to all the time, and not feel that the sole purpose of them being in your deal is for them to just, be a source of money, but instead they're going to see the things that make Cumulative Advantage work, because they're going to see, wow, I love this. When I get these emails, there's story here, and I need to know what's going to happen next. And I want to know what my relationship is like with this character, right? Because this is all happening up in their heads, just like when they read your book. And if you use those tools, you're going to see your engagement go up. You're going to see people naturally flowing through this process and becoming the purest signal you possibly can have to then use for your mailing list and your launches. And the folks that don't, they're just not going to get onto your list, because the way I've designed these steps, there has to be a lot of intent before you start going on a list that's going to be getting, promotions and things that are tied to your, list that you would be using for advertising, or when you're saying buy my book. Because you don't want a list of people that haven't even read your first lead magnet. They're not going to buy your book. So let's get them off that list. So your list is going to be a lot smaller, be higher quality, and it's going to have the signal that when you put it into algorithms for advertising or marketing, it's going to amplify a signal that is the truest signal you possibly can do. So I hope that's been a help to you understanding what I'm doing with this whole thing. Together, change how we market and do it in a way where your readers begin to see your story world as a safe, fun, exciting place to hang out, and their identity gets associated with that. And then they start looking for people like them that are into your story world, because that's what builds community, and that's what builds brand, and that's what's going to help you sell more books.